Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. Should you own an extra system? Well, I believe that for a user not to get tired of his sound system, that it's important to have an extra system to kind of reset the brain to fully appreciate everything and to realize when sound is actually turning into something bad. Because it's easy to get used to a bad sound that makes us lose grip on reality and gives us some really bad habits. So I'm just telling you guys because I did this several times, and it's so easy to create a sort of closed in type of sound where you think you're doing a lot of things that are good, but then when you get to hear some other systems, you kind of realize that, oh yeah, I was kind of compensating. I was doing this and that, not really solving the problem at a high enough level. So I just want to tell you guys that before I quickly go on with this video, I have about 330-ish videos at the moment. So I'd suggest that if you really want to save a lot of money in this hi-fi world, that you watch each and every second of those videos, even though they don't seem like they are important, because I have a tendency of going into some really good detail that can not just help myself and the friends that I know, but just people generally in hi-fi, because I just have a very different view on looking at hi-fi from a more artistic point of view, where I don't go into technicality and some of the other stuff that a lot of other hi-fi channels do. So just to let you guys know that you can save a lot of money by just following all the free advice on my channel. So just, go into my channel and then sort everything by the oldest video, and then just start from like the first video that I made, and then just continue on and on and on. And I know that I'm not the best presenter. I don't have the best thumbnails. I don't go for looking good, being fake, having sponsored videos. I do this just for the fun of it, to reach a much higher level within the hi-fi world, where I feel that we as all kinds of hi-fi users can get really far in this world if we just do some really basic things and just think about a lot of stuff that other people wouldn't normally advise you to do. So yeah, just to let you know that this is a channel of quality. This isn't PewDiePie, Mr. Beast, or any other normal channel. So just, if you can, go through all the information on my channel, and you never know, YouTube might not be a thing that exists tomorrow, or some other reason. So you can't get all of this information. So use the time on that. I definitely suggest you watching all of my videos if that's possible. So let me just continue on this. Personally, for me, if I could, I would own 3 systems: an Audio Note level 5 tube system as my main system, and then I would have a very opposite Negra sound, which is a lot more analytical. And then I would have probably something a bit more natural still over in the transistor world. So, and then I would have probably like a Martin Design Bird 1 speaker on spectral gear and a Verity Sarastro speaker on the Negra gear. That is like the most ideal scenario for me. You could be different. You could have some other dream systems in your view. This is just me. So ideally, that's what I would do if I had the money. But for normal people, I recommend doing something like this: having a normal transistor setup in a room, and then an extra setup like a headphone setup, and then maybe a third setup, which is like the opposite type of sound in a tube form. So let me give you some examples of this. And I like to recommend this on my channel because it just gives you so much value, and I just don't see any normal hi-fi channels covering this. It's so basic. It's so good on a really solid start level. So I think that we should do this if we can. First system should be something like this. Fenderstein 1CI used model. Don't go with the 1C models. Those are usually not as developed in sound. Only go with that if you can get that for like a couple of $100. Just pay 2, 3, maybe 4 times more for the 1CI model. It is substantially better. There's also the 2CE model, which is in some ways better, more dynamic, more bass, more kick. But it's also a lot more demanding power-wise. So we basically put this with that on, and you've only got something around $1,000 when you buy this used. Yeah, only $1,000. And then you get some basic CD player to start with. It could be something like this. This is good value starter CD player, you know. Just take a Nade CD player, or like this is an old one, you know. You could take a lot newer version, which perhaps costs like $100 used. Fantastic start that really gets you into hi-fi and get you out of this horrible zone of cheapness that we have nowadays with the lowest low gear. And you know, it's a system that only costs you around $1,000 if you're lucky. Perhaps it costs $800 if you're really lucky, but most likely it will cost you around $1,000. And yeah, places like Europe, they probably cost you like 1.5 to 2 times more. But what I'm trying to say is that this type of sound in our stores right here now usually will cost you $5,000 to $15,000 US dollars new. And of course there are exceptions to the rule. You can of course get something that only costs like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 if you're really lucky and you know your stuff. But you know, we're all not that lucky to find those very rare offers. So this is just, you know, guaranteed good starter sound. And then I recommend a headphone setup. You know, you could own a headphone setup that isn't very expensive, that actually gives you a lot of value. That like this here, you can get that for like $150 used, good starter sound. And then again, something like this for about maybe $100 US dollars if you're lucky. But I think more like 150 new. And probably like, yeah, I think $100 used. And just remember to go for the higher ohm versions, you know, the 150, 250, 600 ohm versions. They are usually a bit better, and of course on stuff like this it sounds better. And you could also go for something like this instead, you know, a bit more refined, a bit more musical, different angle on the sound. More pleasant, but yeah, just smart purchase, you know. And if you're lucky, you only get to pay like $500 for something like this in some kind of a used marketplace. Maybe you have to pay about $100 for something like this. You know, they've made so many models, Nade, and they're fine. You know, they're a fine starter sound. You know, you get a lot of value. And then perhaps later you want to go for something that's a bit better. Perhaps you want to go for something like a Rega Apollo. I'm guessing it's something like $300 US dollars used. That's just the current price. When you're looking at this video in the future, the price could be very different. It might even go all the way down to like $100 or $200. And then, yeah, of course, once we get into this class of CD players, you know, the Yamaha 1000 models, we're starting to get into a solid sound with a lot of class, better structure and stuff like that. Yeah, there's still some small itsy bitsy things here and there, but you're just getting so much value. And you could, I'm guessing, currently get this like a 2006 model for only around $500, around that area. In my country, I mean, there's still people trying to get like $1,000 plus for this thing. It's just ridiculous. But you could, I think, in the US or some special place in Europe, if you're lucky, get this for perhaps $500, where it kind of belongs in that area zone, you know. And that's only around, you know, $500 to $1,000 used total for all of this. And it will give you a sound that's typically around $2,000 or $4,000 new in stores. So that, just look out for that. You know, that's a really smart way to do it. And then thirdly, I would suggest for your third system here that you visit this guy. You know, I haven't heard his stuff, but you can tell by looking at the design, the looks, the way that he reacts. This guy seems like a really honest guy who makes a solid sound. I heard from other people trying his products that it's very, very good value. I haven't got any personal experience with it. I don't have any relationships to this guy, but I just have a feeling, you know, and when I have a feeling about stuff, it's usually something that turns out to be right. I would say 80 to 90% of the time. I of course make mistakes, but I definitely feel that this guy is onto something. You know, he makes a sound that's generally that seems to give a lot of value, but I just don't expect it to perform as speakers that cost 5, 10, 20 or 50 times more than this type of gear. But I do without a doubt expect it to beat most things around the same price, or things that are 2, 3, 4, perhaps 5 times more expensive. That is my expectation, having looked at all the crossovers and the videos that he makes. And you know, certain people just have a certain vibe to themselves where you can feel that, are they bullshitting you, are they being real? And I can just tell looking at this guy, he's a hard working guy. He seems to be very honest. I like that he's so transparent. And you know, it's just, I just feel that we need more, you know, people like this being supported in our business. So all the luck to him. I wish I could hear some of his designs. So yeah, all the luck to him. So I just wanna say, you can take some of his products, or something like Troels Gravesen design, which is another speaker designer, and then you can put something like a Torhauge tube amplifier. The reason why I say Torhauge instead of Kane and all of these, you know, modern brands like Wellington or whatever they're called, is that it's just a very good starter, very warm, comfortable, pleasant, forgiving sound. So when you're new to hi-fi and you're experimenting with this and that, there's a lot of room for error with stuff like this. And usually when you're going with decent kits and stuff like Troels Gravesen type of sound, there is also again room for error. You get a bit of extra boosted sound. You typically a lot of bass, a lot of kick, a lot of power, a lot of pretty decent control. Of course, when usually, you know, I haven't heard this guy's designs here, but I've heard, you know, a lot of Troels Gravesen designs and a lot of other kits. And usually we are a bit on the simple side, you know, not having all the small details in place, and the 3D imaging, you know, and just the crazy sound effects that get people really addicted to wanting to spend, you know, 50, 100, 200, 500,000 dollars on gear. You know, I mean, we're not into that sound typically. So just so you know, but it's just a fantastic starter sound, and I'm guessing this guy is also. So check that out. But yeah, I just want to say, again, a good tip to you guys, if you want to go into these kits, you know, I know you do it to save money, but don't start off with the cheapest stuff. You know, I would usually try to select stuff that's in the mid to high level kit stuff. Perhaps get it done. There's also something called Audio Note Kit, which is also pretty good kit gear out there. And so just know that when you're coming into it, if you start off with these very cheap kits, doesn't matter who makes them. It's just because of the price alone, you won't be paying for a top sound. So I would start in the middle or in the top range when you're looking into kits. Just so you know, that's just my personal opinion in general with everything that's out there. So and again, you know, this isn't a lot of money, you know, altogether these things used and perhaps new together only cost around this, which isn't a lot, you know, for a whole system. And you can always get some, you know, some basic CD or whatever to start with. So that's to how it looks, and it's some powerful, comfortable sounding, very warm tube gear, but don't expect you know, micro details and this fantastic holographic image where everything's separated. And you know, it can make everything sound pleasant and decent and okay. And I think that's a good place to start when you're going into hi-fi. You don't want to start off with something like Lungdorf or Airtight or some really top expensive gear when you're just getting into hi-fi. You don't wanna get into stuff that's a bit more forgiving, that kind of enables you to just explore everything, you know, cables, room, speakers, whatever. So conclusion, so for around $500 total, you can easily have 3 totally different types of sounds in 3 setups that offer a very good value. So then you don't have to miss out on 4 different worlds of audio, which are transistor gear, tube gear, headphone gear, and do-it-yourself sound. So isn't that amazing? I just came up with a solution that where you can own 3 systems for around $5,000. That isn't a lot of money, you know, and we're not talking about a normal amount of $5,000 that you use on gear. We're talking about something that usually would cost you perhaps $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in the normal world, if you just took like normal gear out there and just, you know, tried random stuff locally where you live. So just take my advice. You know, I've been doing this for some years. These are things that just give you a lot of value. Of course, there are other things also to consider. So yeah, it's not black and white. I just wanted to give you a lot of value. And then you won't have to consider anything really new in the budget class over the next 10 years time. And, you know, perhaps later you would want something more exclusive. And fine, if that's you, if you've reached that level here, then fine. Then this video continues. Now it gets even more interesting, because now we're getting into gear that is a lot more evolved, a lot more better timed, a lot more power, a lot more control, just a lot more of everything, you know. And these are things that I've experienced that just give you a hell of a lot of value, especially if you live around the Canada, US area, and perhaps also in some parts of the world, some parts in Europe, perhaps some parts in Asia or other places potentially. It could also be, you know, in the more difficult areas in the world where it's perhaps a bit more difficult to get good gear. It could be stuff like, you know, Australia, New Zealand, Africa, India, whatever. You know, I haven't a lot of experience with those countries because I haven't been to those places. But this is something you might wanna check out, because I know pretty much what's going on the market, what's hot, what's not, what's getting off people's radars. And in speaking of that, getting off the radar, stuff like this that a lot of people won't consider anymore. This is the Macintosh MCD 301 model, which is like, this is around the time where Macintosh got into the really good CD sound. But a lot of people won't take it into consideration because they'll be looking at the 500 model, the 1100 model, the 600, 700, or whatever they're called nowadays. So there'll be a lot of these hanging out there, kind of giving you a bit more value than you usually would get off Macintosh gear, because Macintosh has a tendency, like Acroface, just, you know, keeping its value for a ridiculous amount of time, like some other few models for some other few brands. And I don't find it to be, you know, reflective of the quality of the product. But I have to say that there are things about Macintosh and Acroface that are just ridiculously good, seen from a point that isn't necessarily sound-wise, but everything around that. So the whole boxing, presentation, the knobs, the practicality, the way you have it on standby, the service, the whole RMA process of getting stuff done under the warranty. It's a very it's a very special part of the market where, even though you're not necessarily getting the best sound in the world, you're just getting a lot of this ownership experience that's so nice to have, you know, where everything about the product, visually, all the tactile, you know, feeling it, plugging it in here, the feedback that you get from dialing the volume up and down. It's just really nice feedback that you get. And that's what I really like about Macintosh. So let's just get into it. I think that at that time, a couple of years into the future, you would perhaps be able to get something like this for $500 or $1,000, is my guess. But if you can't get that, you could also want to consider this lower model here, which is a bit more of a traditional shut-in type of sound, but still there's a lot of originality. You know, you definitely notice a significant difference going from this to that, you know, where it just gets a lot more evolved, a lot more fine, a lot more detailed on a technical level, and that's generally what's happening with these Macintosh CD players as you go more and more forward in time, as I've been able to see these many years. It just, you know, structurally gets a lot better, a lot more evolved, a lot more clear, a lot more separated. And Some people think that that is more natural. Others think that that is less natural. So again, I feel that this is around the time where the sound from Macintosh starts to change into this more modern direction, this 301 model, where you go, if you go back to this model here, it's more of an old-fashioned traditional sound that's more taped in, less about the 3D structures. So just so you know, but again, fantastic value. And just very important when you're dealing with Macintosh is that of course it works with a lot of other brands, but I generally suggest that you don't break up the Macintosh CD from the Macintosh amplifier connection. I suggest that you have this Macintosh CD and a Macintosh amplifier if at all you want to own Macintosh, because it's just, the sound is just so much better when you don't break those apart. If you want to save a couple of $100, perhaps a couple of $1,000 on this, I get it, but ultimately you are, I think, going to regret it, because you can get a lot of stuff that sounds similar to this, like a Yamaha CD player, where you'll probably save a couple of $100, but I don't recommend doing it. That's just me personally. So fantastic value, also looks great, and again, I feel that personally, when we start getting into these models here, the 6900 models, then I feel that Macintosh starts to cement its sound. It starts to get that power, that control, that drive, that feeling of confidence where you feel as a user that, wow, it isn't that standard plasticky, gimmicky China sound. It's got potential here. You know, I've actually got a tool where I can take it a bit this way, a bit that way, perhaps manipulate it a bit with some cables. Yeah, if you want to go nuts and do the equalizer thing, you know, I don't really find it doing anything good to the sound, but it's just, I just feel that here Macintosh starts to shine, you know, that's when it starts filling you with confidence. Whereas I feel that when you're looking into these 66 models and below, you kind of start to doubt yourself, like, isn't this a bit thin? Isn't this a bit vague? Isn't it a bit, you know, like a lot of other stuff on the market? I feel that this is where it starts to cement its sound. I just feel it's a pity that Macintosh had to do this, you know, this small jack connection here, because I think that was a bad decision. You know, you generally don't want to do that, because if they have a good integrated headphone amplifier generally in their stuff, and you want to keep it then at this standard here, because that's what you usually get when you have a good headphone. So that's just, you know, bad decision from Macintosh in my opinion. But again, this is where the charm of ownership and just, you know, the feedback by looking at it is just so, it's just so fun, you know, to play with. So I recommend 6900 and above, but especially, this is so difficult to get a hold of. If you can get the 7000 model, my God, that is just a really, really good rare Macintosh sound. I know that a lot of people that are into higher level gear, they're gonna think like, oh, this is sacrilegious, you know, blasphemy. How can you say Macintosh is good? It's so flat and bright and all that. Yeah, I kind of agree. You know, generally, I also feel like that. But I just feel that, you know, there are these small exceptions to the rule where I feel that you're getting actually quite a lot for your money, even though they're overly priced on the used market. You know, these are old models that I'm pointing at here. I think these might be, you know, they might have some of these left in store, and definitely some of these. And You could also get like the 8900 model and the 9000 model, which is the newest model. But I just generally feel that the value of those aren't really that good, you know. They're just really expensive. So if you can, go for one of these, and especially this is a lot more neutral, a lot more powerful than this. This is a lot more of a retro-like Macintosh sound, where it feels more like tube. So you can do a lot here, you know. This is where you take it to the next level. And if you want something that's close to this sound but cheaper, used around half price, don't forget, around, I think it starts at around year 2006 that Yamaha began to make these 2000 models. I'm just guessing, you know. I remember being in the stores around 2006 to 2011, trying a couple of these. I can't remember what exact models it were, but I could hear that there was a lot of potential here. You know, this is a very good sound that it shouldn't be very expensive. I've seen it locally in my country, you know, where people still try to take $1,000 or $2,000 for stuff like this. But you know, if you're lucky, you can get something like this, an amplifier like this and a CD player like this for only about $500 to $1,000 currently. I think perhaps in the US or Canada. And if you can, you know, this is just remarkable value that you're getting, and it's kind of for those people that perhaps feel that they can't afford the used Macintosh gear, but they want something that's similar, you know. It's slightly different in priority, but it's also very compatible. So if you ever want to split the Macintosh amplifier from the CD player because you can't afford the Macintosh CD player, go with something like a Yamaha 2000 model. Not 1000, but I would suggest that you take the 2000 model and then take it over to something like this. You know, that's a very good sound. But if you get into the 1000 Yamaha CD model, I think it's a bit on the thin, vague side. So I would definitely suggest that you don't do that. You will potentially regret that. So they just have this very, I don't know how to describe this sound. It's just a very neutral, pleasant, focused type of sound. Yeah, it's a bit polite. Yeah, it's lacking a bit of grip, but you can always, you know, if you do all the basics in your system and you have a good power bar, good cables, have an earth connection and all of that, and perhaps have a fitting speaker, you can easily make this sound really, you know, get up there, you know, and move. So don't look at all the bad reviews from this time that say that it's too polite and vague and stuff like that, lacking a bit of bite and grunt. It does have some of that, but price wise, you're really getting a lot of you know, value here. And generally, yeah, 2000 models upwards, that's just really good Yamaha sound. I would be a bit, you know, hesitant with the 1000 models. They do offer it kind of feels it starts to get really good there, but I wouldn't do it. You know, I would wait for the 2000 models if you could. I would only go for the 1000 models if you had a lower grade system. But if you want something that gives you even more human personality, style, and just, you know, it's more about the quality and the substance than you know, perhaps Yamaha or Macintosh, then I suggest you get ear equipment. And yeah, if you're more into perfection, black level, structure, grip, of course, Macintosh is then the way to go. But human quality, style, substance, direction, a bit of natural color. If you want that, you know, and you feel that Macintosh can't give you that, if it's a bit sterile, too perfect for you or whatever, go with something like Ear 8L6. Just very stylish, natural, almost diva-like sound. So yeah, I'd suggest going with this combination here. I think probably around this time, as I'm filming this, you could probably, if you're lucky, get this for like $1,500–2,000 in the US, and probably more like $2,000 used, perhaps a bit more than that in Europe. But this is good gear, you know. This is where really good gear starts. I would say together with the Macintosh MA7000. This is where really good sound starts, just so you know. And I've borrowed this some time at home and listened to it, and I also heard it other places, and it's just really good sound, and especially when you combine it with what I heard was the original Ear Acoustic CD. Yeah, you can change the tube in it. It can probably evolve the sound a bit, yada yada yada. I would suggest, just as a personal touch thing, personally, if I had this, you know what I would do? I would actually consider getting a Kondo copper RCA cable from this thing over to this. That's just a very fitting type of cable. Maybe Yorma cable, maybe something like that. Perhaps transparent cable in perhaps the mid class. It's just, you know, we're dealing with gear here that is all about class, personality, substance. So you don't want to drown the sound out with analytical cables like MIT cables, or yeah, Siltech can also get a bit analytical, or you also don't really want to use transparent cables, which can be a bit on the heavy, warmish side. And you definitely don't want to use, you know, lower end cables like Fender Hull and their lower models that they have, or you know, you just don't want to use nasty cables. This is where you really start to use fine cables, and I think that just a very good pairing with this would be like a I don't know, how much does that cost? $500 used or new? I don't know. In the US, like a 1 meter RCA Kondo cable. Just a very good fit for this type of sound with that. And that's like the whole system. Of course, you need a speaker. That could, of course, be a Fender Sting 2CE, would be very fitting for this. Perhaps just like the small 1CI, whatever. It could also be like an audio note speaker. You could be like, oh, I want to get into this audio note thing. I heard it was so good. Yeah, you could make this work with a lot of audio note speakers. I wouldn't say that you have to settle with the lower models. You could get a bit ambitious, because when we're getting into gear like this, you can be a bit daring and get up all the way up to I don't know, an audio note. You could potentially get up to something like a I can say you can be a bit ambitious and get up to something like this, but perhaps you want to look at something that's a bit more realistic, that's more on this level here, you know, the starter audio note sound. That's perhaps a bit more fitting, a bit more forgiving, and of course about half the price. So those are some things to think about. Of course, you can also go with the lower class speakers, the J and even lower models. I just feel that if you do that, it's a bit, you know, you're just wasting the potential of this and that. Of course, you can do that. It's just my personal opinion. Of course, you can also go in a completely different direction and take something like a good solid audio solution speaker, Perhaps it could be monitor audio speaker. It's a good, you know, potential sound. I wouldn't really consider stuff like Canton speaker on this because it's kind of opposite sound, but it could be interesting to hear, especially if you go from one of the you know, bigger models. And yeah, you know, we could also say that in theory you could get like a lower level complete Audio Note 1 level 1 system that is around the same price used, that is perhaps a bit more genuine and authentic in sound than this ear gear, you know. But again, we're theorizing here. We kind of have to make a lot of demos to find out what's better and what you like. So and I would suggest, just as a last thing on this video here, that you also want to consider, if you have two different speaker systems, that you once in a while perhaps change rooms, so that you go from a 15 square meter room to like a 30 square meter room. I think that's a very good thing to do once in a while, if you like doing that, because it also keeps the brain engaged, so it doesn't become, if you get too used to a certain type of sound, you can get a bit introverted, and you can kind of lose, what do you call that, objectivity, a bit. So you you know, end up running yourself into a hole. So those are just my considerations. And you know, stuff like Yamaha, I wouldn't use the best gear, not the best gear, the best cables on that. I would just use some, you know, some regular decent okay cables. It could be Kimber, it could be Cardas, AudioQuest. I mean, it's all kind of fine with Yamaha, you know. I don't feel that at this level it's really worth experimenting with really exclusive cables, because I still consider it a bit of a bit basic in sound, but still with a lot of potential. So I feel that you can do pretty much anything here with cables. But I feel that once you get into Macintosh, there are some certain types of cables that work a lot better. Some people like MIT cables a lot with Macintosh. I feel that it can in a way sound very good, especially when you have Macintosh with Macintosh. It gives you a very certain type of direction that kind of seems fitting to some degree. But you know, a lot of people like myself feel that that's a bit, you know, unnatural and forced and hi-fi in sound. So perhaps you want to go with something more like Cardas, that is on the warm side, or more neutral like AudioQuest. And when I say, you know, one is warm and one is neutral, I'm not dissing one or the other. It's just, you know, Cardas just generally has a tendency of being more tonally warm and forgiving and boosted in sound, which is a good thing. And AudioQuest has a tendency of being more neutral and having a different priority, different personality, which is also good in its own way, you know. So I wouldn't put one ahead of the other. I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff you can do there. But I have to warn you guys that I've tried fancy cables on Macintosh, and to some degree it does change the sound for the better, especially when you look on the back of this and you see the preamp and the power amp connection. There's a connector on the back, you know, like a jumper connector, whatever you call it, on the back. And you could of course put some fancy cable there that I've described in one of my previous videos. That will of course help the sound, but just a word of warning is that you can easily, when you've got gear that is built like Macintosh, waste a lot of money on cables, meaning that you won't get anywhere near to harvesting all of that potential that the cable has to offer. So actually what I suggest is that that you get Macintosh cable. I think I've heard that once, can't remember, but it's anyway built by Macintosh and probably has a similar cable that's in Macintosh. So I just feel that why not, you know, you're just getting closer to that original type of sound. But you know, you can use a lot of different cables on Macintosh, and it can, you know, it can all sound to some degree good. I just find that generally you have to put a lot of energy, and you have to go a bit overkill on that for it to change the sound a lot. And once you've done that, it can sometimes get a bit weird. So I would put some decent cables on it. I just wouldn't go nuts. And when I say nuts, I mean stuff like Nordust Valhalla, Nordust Odin, you know, these ultra expensive MIT cables, these ultra expensive transparent cables. I just, you know, I just feel that it's a bit of a, you know, a waste of money, even though to some degree that those are really interesting sounds, you know, that do stuff, you know. So it's not because it doesn't change the sound too much, but those are just my feelings. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And yeah, conclusion, I think we all should own 2 or 3 systems, and this is how you get to do that, you know. So like and subscribe if you like this video. Have a nice day. Bye.